June 10th, 2026. There is one detail missing from nearly every report about last night's Apache crash in the Strait of Hormuz. Throughout the night, Iran attempted to locate 2 American aviators drifting in the Persian Gulf. The effort failed. It was not because its Mosquito fleet, numbering more than 500 fast attack boats, was absent from the search. It was not because the mission lacked urgency. 2 U.S. Army soldiers were floating in one of the most heavily contested maritime regions on Earth during darkness, amid an active blockade enforcement operation, while a ceasefire was supposedly in place. Iran came up empty because a robot arrived first, an autonomous U.S. Navy drone boat assigned to Task Force 59 located the crew of a downed AH-64 Apache gunship in the Gulf of Oman, recovered both personnel from the water, and delivered them to safety in roughly 2 hours. Both aviators returned unharmed and in stable condition. No additional American lives were placed at risk. No rescue helicopter entered the same danger zone that had already produced a lost aircraft. No crewed vessel crossed the world's most contested shipping route during the night. While Iranian fast attack craft searched for the same personnel, an unmanned boat found them first. A drone boat completed the recovery. Iran's Mosquito fleet eventually returned to port with nothing to show for the operation, despite conducting what was arguably the most urgent search mission undertaken by the IRGC Navy since the blockade began. That is the real story. The crash itself matters less than the rescue. More importantly, the rescue exposed a technological aspect of this conflict more clearly than any missile strike or attack on petrochemical infrastructure. A robotic vessel carried out what may be the first autonomous maritime personnel recovery in recorded military history. To understand how that happened, it is necessary to revisit the chain of events that led to the Apache's loss and subsequent recovery. That sequence reveals the operational conditions the American military is managing at the same time that President Trump says diplomatic negotiations continue. Move back 36 hours from June 9th. Iran launched ballistic missile barges toward Israel on June 7th and June 8th. Those launches ended the 2-month period of restraint that had followed the April 8th ceasefire regarding direct missile activity. Israel responded on June 8th with strikes against 20 targets across Iran. Air defense systems were eliminated. The Mashhar petrochemical complex was hit. A mobile launcher moving near Kamsha was destroyed. Trump issued a ceasefire appeal. Netanyahu announced that firing on the Iranian front had stopped. Iran declared a suspension of operations. At the very same time, an AH-64 Apache was conducting a patrol over the Gulf of Oman near the entrance to the Strait of Hormuz. After sunset on June 8th, during one of the standard blockade enforcement missions flown by American helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft since April 13th, the aircraft crashed into the sea. CENTCOM later confirmed that both crew members were recovered within approximately 2 hours. The reason for the crash remains under investigation. Iran immediately claimed responsibility, asserting that it had shot the helicopter down. Geography raises serious doubts about that assertion. The Apache went down near the Omani side of the strait, along the southern approach. This area sits opposite the Iranian coastline, where the IRGC concentrates much of its fast attack boat capability. Iran does not maintain the same concentration of anti-aircraft systems near the Omani coast as it does along its own shoreline. Its maritime threat structure is designed to pressure commercial traffic toward Iranian waters, rather than contest the southern approach. Mechanical malfunction is one possible explanation. Maintenance failure is another. At the far edge of possibility, debris from an Iranian drone engagement may have entered one of the Apache's engines during close-range air defense operations. Those explanations remain plausible. A successful Iranian shot at that distance on the Omani approach does not. Yet the cause of the crash is less important than what happened afterward. The recovery effort revealed a maritime capability operating in the strait that even the IRGC may not have realized was present. The next question is why an AH-64 Apache was routinely flying over the Gulf of Oman at night during blockade enforcement operations. That detail changes the way the American mission in the strait is understood beyond carrier strike group deployments and the FA-18 tanker interdiction operations that dominate headlines. The Apache was originally designed as a tank killer. Its 30mm M230 chain gun and Hellfire missiles were optimized for destroying armored formations in contested ground combat. Over the Strait of Hormuz, however, the aircraft serves a different purpose. In blockade enforcement operations, it functions as both a drone interceptor and a deterrent against fast attack boats. The IRGC Navy operates a Mosquito fleet composed of small, high-speed fiberglass craft, armed with rocket-propelled grenades, heavy machine guns, and, in some cases, anti-ship missiles. These boats create a saturation threat against both commercial shipping and American naval assets. Conventional warships are not ideally configured to counter such targets at close range and in the dense contact environments favored by Mosquito fleet tactics. The Apache brings unique advantages. It can fly low within the same threat space occupied by fast attack craft. Its optical systems can identify and engage multiple small surface targets in rapid succession. It is also built to survive in environments where shoulder-fired man-portable air defense systems represent the primary threat rather than the radar-guided systems targeted by the electronic warfare capabilities of the F-35I. Together, these traits make the Apache the platform best suited to maintain low-altitude patrols over the Strait's critical choke points. The close-in presence helps prevent more than 500 Mosquito Fleet boats from overwhelming the commercial shipping that blockade enforcement efforts are simultaneously protecting and redirecting away from Iranian ports. The Apache lost on June 8th was performing exactly that mission. Its destruction carries operational significance because it removes a close-range threat suppression asset from the Strait at a moment when uncertainty surrounding the ceasefire is at its highest. The fragile truce creates maximum doubt regarding Iran's willingness to test maritime enforcement through harassment by fast attack craft. The crash also created a difficult rescue problem. The solution to that problem, delivered by a Task Force 59 autonomous drone boat, may have produced the first military personnel recovery ever completed by an unmanned maritime vehicle. The challenge involved three elements. The first was time. 2 aviators floating in the Gulf of Oman at night could potentially be detected by nearly every surveillance platform operating in the theater, including Iranian ISR systems. Iranian operators would have understood immediately that the loss of the Apache created an opportunity to capture American military personnel. In a negotiation environment, any American held by Iran becomes leverage capable of altering the terms of a deal. The second factor was risk. Sending a crewed rescue helicopter meant introducing another rotary wing aircraft into the same threat environment that had already brought down the first one. That decision would carry the possibility of a second loss before the first crew had been recovered. Dispatching a manned vessel involved a different danger. Such a vessel would have to move through the most contested sea lane on Earth, past Iranian fast attack boat concentrations, and through waters affected by minefield charts distributed by Iran to funnel traffic toward coastal threat systems. The possibility that a rescue operation might create an even larger incident than the original Apache crash is precisely why military planners avoid throwing good assets after bad in contested environments. The third factor was deniability. Every crewed American platform moving toward the crash site would have provided Iranian state media with another event to publicize, another opportunity to claim engagement with U.S. forces, another piece of material for a narrative centered on imposing costs on the American military presence in the Strait. An unmanned vessel changed that equation completely. The drone boat located the crew, the drone boat recovered the crew, the drone boat returned them to safety. No additional American asset exposed itself to danger. No additional engagement opportunity emerged. No new propaganda victory was created. The robot completed the mission. Iran gained nothing from its overnight search effort. The Manta Ray serves as the surface and near-surface ISR counterpart to the Lamprey's underwater tracking function. This unmanned system can remain at sea for weeks without resupply. During that period, it conducts uninterrupted passive monitoring across the maritime space it occupies. The intelligence it gathers flows into the same networked command structure supplied by the Lamprey from beneath the waterline. The drone boat that recovered the Apache crew fills another role within that architecture. It functions as both a rescue platform and a surface engagement asset. Its performance during the personnel recovery mission and its potential integration with directed energy systems and machine guns illustrate the third major component of Task Force 59's operational framework. Attention now shifts to Iran's response after the Apache crash, and why that response carries significance beyond the embarrassment of more than 500 fast attack boats losing a race against an unmanned vessel. The IRGC Navy reacted immediately. From an operational standpoint, the decision made perfect sense. 2 American service members in the water at night, close to Iranian-controlled areas, represented the most valuable acquisition opportunity encountered since the blockade started. American military personnel held by Iran during active negotiations would fundamentally reshape the diplomatic landscape. Iran has used hostage leverage before. The 1979 hostage crisis remains one example. The Revolutionary Guard capture of British sailors in 2007 is another. The detention of American Navy sailors in 2016 follows the same pattern. The recurring practice of using captured Western or American military personnel as bargaining leverage during sensitive diplomatic periods has long been part of the IRGC's established playbook. On the evening of June 8th, 2 Apache aviators floating in the Persian Gulf, while Trump simultaneously stated that final peace negotiations were progressing, represented exactly the type of opportunity this doctrine was designed to exploit. The IRGC Navy directed every available asset in the area toward the crash location. The drone boat had already arrived. The aviators were already on board. The unmanned vessel was already heading towards safety before the fastest boat in the Mosquito Fleet reached the coordinates where the Apache entered the water. That specific timing advantage explains why Trump's description of the operation as military history was not simple rhetoric. The speed advantage enjoyed by the autonomous platform over the crude IRGC response prevented the negotiation process from being influenced by the most effective leverage tool available to Iran in a bilateral environment where talks were continuing. The discussion now turns to the possibility of armed drone boats. The rescue mission demonstrated that Task Force 59 can operate autonomous surface vessels successfully within the contested waters of the Strait. That achievement raises an urgent question for IRGC naval planners. If a robot boat can locate, recover, and transport personnel, while more than 500 IRGC fast attack boats search unsuccessfully for the same people, what happens when an armed version of that platform confronts the Mosquito Fleet doctrine itself? The Mosquito Fleet concept depends on overwhelming crewed platforms through numerical superiority. Human-operated vessels carry personnel whose protection influences every engagement decision. A destroyer commander facing 40 fast attack boats at once must balance the threat against the safety of the crew on board. That requirement naturally limits the aggressiveness of tactical responses. An autonomous drone boat operating under AI-directed engagement rules against those same 40 vessels faces no crew protection requirement. The limitation affecting a human commander simply does not exist. Directed energy systems mounted on Task Force 59 drone boats could engage multiple small, fast-moving targets simultaneously at speeds made possible by directed energy technology. Unlike conventional machine guns or missile systems, such weapons are not constrained by traditional ammunition limits. Machine gun systems linked to the same AI tracking network that located the Apache crew in open water could engage swarming fast attack boats with a level of accuracy and reaction speed that separates automated responses from human-controlled engagements. The Mosquito Fleet doctrine relies on numbers to compensate for the quality gap between individual IRGC boats and American destroyers. An autonomous counter-swarm strategy changes that equation. When numerical advantage comes from robotic production costs instead of personnel recruitment and training, the compensating advantage disappears entirely. The broader global picture on June 9th adds another layer to this discussion. The transit of the Dutch frigate H&L MS De Ruyter through the Taiwan Strait under visible Chinese military shadowing reflected a gray zone operational pattern closely connected to the lessons emerging from the Persian Gulf. Chinese forces tracked and shadowed the NATO frigate throughout the transit. No shots were fired. No interference occurred. Yet the surveillance was intentionally visible rather than hidden. This reflects a doctrine centered on normalizing presence. The objective is to condition the operational environment so that a future stage involving physical confrontation appears less extraordinary than it otherwise would. The Dutch vessel completed its passage. Chinese monitoring was documented and reported. The pattern continued. During the preceding month, more than 200 Chinese aircraft entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone. Taiwan's response extends beyond diplomatic protest. Its legislature approved a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar special defense budget intended to accelerate procurement of American weapons. The security environment in the Taiwan Strait has shifted acquisition timelines from strategic patience toward operational urgency. Taiwan is purchasing American arms because its defense planners have concluded that China's gray zone activities are not isolated harassment operations. They view them as battle space preparation efforts. Intelligence collection conducted during these operations helps establish the operational conditions for a future contingency should deterrence fail. The trajectory of escalating gray zone activity serves to prepare the environment for that possibility. The American military posture in the Pacific remains the primary structure intended to maintain costs and risks above the threshold China's leadership is prepared to accept. The shadowing of the Dutch frigate and the failed IRGC search for the Apache crew are not unrelated events. Both represent versions of the same approach. Pressure is applied below the threshold of open warfare in order to shape the environment for decisions that the pressure campaign seeks to make unavoidable. Another development demands attention. DARPA's reusable hypersonic strike aircraft carries major implications for the future direction of military technology. A reusable hypersonic strike platform capable of exceeding Mach 5, penetrating advanced air defenses, delivering precision ordnance, and returning for reuse represents the next extension of capabilities already demonstrated during air defense suppression operations in the Iran conflict. Current campaigns have shown the value of subsonic and supersonic strike systems. The reusable hypersonic concept pushes that advantage into a speed range where existing air defense systems cannot intercept incoming strike elements. The combination of kinetic energy and maneuverability available to hypersonic vehicles exceeds the engagement solutions offered by radar-guided and infrared-guided surface-to-air missile systems. Those defensive systems were designed with maximum engagement speeds below the hypersonic threshold, creating the margin that hypersonic development seeks to exploit. Inside the Pentagon, debate continues regarding whether an unmanned hypersonic platform should replace the proposed F-47 next-generation fighter. The Task Force 59 rescue has made that discussion more urgent. The operation demonstrated that AI-governed unmanned systems can successfully execute missions involving both tactical complexity and extreme time sensitivity. The performance envelope available to robotic systems continues to expand. An unmanned hypersonic platform capable of maneuvers exceeding 30 plus G operates free from the physiological limits imposed by human survival requirements. That capability fundamentally changes engagement dynamics. Air defense designers have long assumed that a pilot inside the cockpit restricts maneuverability to approximately 9G. Remove the pilot and the assumptions change. One final dimension brings the Apache rescue into personal focus. 2 American Army aviators survived a helicopter crash in the most contested body of water on Earth during nighttime conditions, in the middle of an active conflict. Their survival depended on a robot boat that the IRGC did not know was present. Guided by an AI-enabled search and navigation system, the vessel located them before the more than 500 boats dispatched by the IRGC could do the same. It returned them to safety without exposing a single additional American life to danger. For the United States, the cost of that recovery consisted of deploying the drone boat and operating the software that directed its navigation and search functions. For Iran, the cost of failure was different. The event confirmed that the strait it claimed to control under the Persian Gulf Strait Authority framework is being monitored by sensors and challenged by platforms that had not been fully incorporated into Iran's intelligence assessment. The safety of American families remains connected to successes like that rescue in ways that the immediate story only partially reveals. Every American service member recovered from a contested zone without becoming a bargaining asset for Iran is one less variable capable of influencing negotiations away from the long-term nuclear security framework that the uranium disposition requirement is intended to establish. Here's the full assessment of what June 8th and June 9th revealed, something the previous 101 days of conflict had not clearly demonstrated. Iran's Mosquito fleet, consisting of more than 500 fast attack boats combined with minefields, coastal anti-ship missile batteries, and shore-based radar networks, could not reach an open water personnel recovery site before a robot boat operating inside its own strategic approach area. The United States military had already positioned autonomous maritime systems throughout the Strait of Hormuz. Iran did not realize they were there until one of those systems rescued 2 Apache aviators before the fastest IRGC Navy boats arrived at the same location. The Lamprey is reportedly monitoring IRGC vessels directly from their hulls without their crews being aware. The Manta Ray is observing activity across the Gulf's surface environment from a platform capable of remaining deployed for weeks without resupply. The drone boat that brought the Apache crew home represents only the visible layer of a larger unmanned network. Beneath the surface and across the surveillance architecture sits the intelligence foundation supporting maritime operations conducted by the American military inside the strait. Iran continues asserting control over a waterway where the intelligence environment is being penetrated by systems it cannot detect, cannot effectively counter through Mosquito fleet tactics, and cannot stop from completing personnel recovery missions faster than 500 crewed boats can reach the same objective. The negotiations continue. The blockade remains in place. The Night Stalkers remain deployed in the region. The uranium remains beneath the mountain. The Mashar chemical supply chain has been reduced to ash. The Apache crew is back home. The drone boat has returned to the water. Meanwhile, the IRGC Navy is confronting a reality in which the platform that reached a potential hostage opportunity before it did was built from software and metal rather than human crews listed on a manifest. The Mosquito fleet deployed 500 boats. The United States deployed a drone. The drone prevailed. Now attention shifts to the enforcement challenge that follows any agreement. The question is straightforward. What prevents Iran from returning to Mosquito fleet harassment and PGSA toll pressure 1 week after a deal is signed? That implementation problem has challenged every Persian Gulf security arrangement since the tanker war of the 1980s. Iran's behavior toward the Strait of Hormuz is not a temporary response to a specific crisis. It is a long-standing strategic posture. The institution views transit through the strait as its most valuable geographic leverage point, and extracting value from that leverage depends upon maintaining a credible disruption threat, whether formal agreements exist or not. The 2015 JCPOA did not stop harassment of commercial shipping. It did not stop IRGC speedboats from operating dangerously close to American naval vessels. It did not stop the seizure of American sailors. Any agreement finalized on June 12th, June 15th, or another future date will confront the same enforcement challenge faced by earlier Persian Gulf security arrangements. Once immediate military pressure appears to diminish, Iran is expected to test maritime restrictions through the deniable channels provided by its Mosquito fleet. The drone boat alters that equation in ways that treaties and conventional naval patrols alone cannot. If Task Force 59's autonomous surface and subsurface network remains deployed in the operational environment after an agreement is signed, Future IRGC probing activity will encounter a surveillance and response architecture that does not require commanders to balance crew safety against engagement decisions. Every fast attack boat moving into position to harass commercial shipping creates a tracking signature. That signature is collected by the lamprey and manta ray systems. It is then available to drone boat formations positioned to intercept. The maritime enforcement mechanism is no longer another destroyer conducting patrols. It becomes a robotic network that never sleeps, never rotates crews, never requires port visits, and cannot be taken hostage. Attention then turns to the lamprey and its implications for the Gadir submarine threat. Iran's underwater capability has remained one of the least discussed aspects of the maritime conflict. Task Force 59's lamprey system changes the tracking equation for the approximately 10 Gadir-class submarines still operating within the IRGC Navy inventory. The Gadir is a 95-foot submarine derived from a North Korean design. Its crew of 7 operates primarily in the shallow coastal waters of the Persian Gulf. In these conditions, thermocline layers and bottom reflection acoustic effects make traditional passive sonar tracking extremely challenging. American attack submarines enjoy major advantages in deep ocean environments. Those advantages are significantly reduced within the shallow operational zones preferred by the Gadir near Iran's coastline. Despite its relatively small size and limited range, the submarine remains strategically relevant. Its anti-ship torpedo capability is one reason. Its theoretical ability to threaten undersea fiber optic cables carrying $10 trillion in daily financial transactions through the Hormuz corridor is another. The lamprey was designed specifically to address the shallow water tracking challenge exploited by the Gadir. The system attaches to the hull while the submarine remains at the pier. It then follows the vessel throughout its deployment cycle, from departure to return. A commander who knows the location of every operational Gadir throughout its mission profile possesses anti-submarine warfare options fundamentally different from those available without such tracking data. 7 undersea cables carry $10 trillion each day through the Hormuz corridor. Protecting those cables represents one of the most important maritime security requirements within any future agreement. The lamprey provides the tracking capability that makes such protection feasible against the Gadir threat in an acoustic environment where conventional surveillance struggles to maintain contact. The Apache crash and the Task Force 59 recovery mission also exposed a gap in Iran's intelligence picture. That intelligence surprise may prove more consequential than the rescue itself. Since February 28th, Iran's intelligence apparatus has monitored American naval deployments throughout the Gulf, with the urgency expected from an institution whose survival depends upon understanding military activity in its strategic approach zone. IRGC commanders were aware of the carrier strike groups. They knew about blockade enforcement aircraft. They tracked the FA-18s, the A-10s, the Apaches, and CENTCOM surface combatants. What they either failed to identify or failed to properly evaluate was the operational scale deployment of Task Force 59 autonomous maritime systems inside the strait. The result became visible when a drone boat located, reached, and recovered Apache crew members faster than 500 alerted fast attack boats that had already begun searching. That intelligence failure extends far beyond one rescue operation. Every capability Iran failed to identify before this event is now confirmed to exist. Yet the complete scale of those capabilities remains unknown. How many lamprey units are attached to IRGC vessels? How many manta ray platforms are conducting passive surveillance across the Gulf? How many drone boats are deployed across forward operating sites along Oman and Gulf Cooperation Council coastlines? Iran does not know. The absence of those answers means every operational decision made by the IRGC Navy is now being taken against an adversary capability picture containing unknown gaps rather than understood limitations. The updated 3-scenario assessment for June 9th reflects the Apache rescue and its broader implications. The first scenario involves a deal being signed within days. The blockade is lifted or shipping patterns normalize. Uranium is disposed of through verified mechanisms. Task Force 59's autonomous architecture remains inside the strait as a permanent post-agreement enforcement presence accepted by Iran as part of economic normalization. Under this outcome, the drone boat that rescued the Apache crew becomes part of the long-term maritime enforcement structure, preventing a return to Mosquito Fleet coercion once diplomatic pressure eases. The second scenario involves delays caused by what Trump described as ignorance or stupidity. Potential triggers include continued IRGC proxy operations in Iraq, the Houthis Red Sea closure declaration, or unilateral Israeli action in Lebanon that results in renewed Iranian ballistic missile employment. In that environment, Task Force 59's demonstrated capability becomes the enforcement tool during the interim period. Its mission would include tracking IRGC naval activity and preventing future American personnel from becoming leverage in negotiations. The third scenario involves execution of the JSOK uranium extraction plan following complete collapse of the agreement. Under that outcome, Task Force 59's maritime architecture supplies the undersea surveillance and surface protection needed for the naval approach corridor used by C-7 Globemasters, delivering extraction equipment to a forward arming and refueling point inside Iran. The robot boat is not simply a single event, it is infrastructure. Its continued deployment changes the risk profile of all three scenarios at the same time. The agreement becomes stronger with it. Interim enforcement becomes more credible with it. The extraction plan becomes more survivable with it. The drone succeeded last night. It will remain in the water tomorrow, regardless of which scenario unfolds next. The uranium remains beneath the mountain. The Night Stalkers remain in the region. The Arrow factory has been reduced to ash. The Apache crew has returned home. The Lamprey may already be attached to a hull somewhere in the strait. Negotiations continue, subject to ignorance or stupidity. The robot boat that reached 2 American soldiers floating near Iran's front yard before 500 IRGC fast attack boats could do so is already back on station, watching, waiting, tracking, operating inside the strait that Iran claims to control and that Task Force 59 has quietly transformed into part of its own operational environment. If you found this analysis valuable, follow for more in-depth coverage of military, geopolitical, and strategic developments shaping today's world. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.